Welcome back to the Keep Going podcast with Vin Kennedy. I'm your host, Vin Kennedy. It being November, we have a special guest. This is Lewis. We both talked about hopping on and kind of November's known for mental health awareness for men. So we kind of wanted to get on, tell a little bit of our stories and just really just chop it up a little bit. So Lewis, you're a repeat offender at this time, but if you want to do a brief intro on who you are and we could hop into it.
Yeah, absolutely. Vin, I appreciate you having me on. Name's Louis Morel. I am from New Jersey. Started running about 3 years ago. I also have a financial firm that specializes in retirement planning for, firefighters. 3 years ago, hit rock bottom. It's almost 300 pounds. Been on this journey since, been able to connect with a lot of great people. Just finished my third marathon, and just in the pursuit to make a difference, right? To push the kingdom forward, to truly just impact other people around us to be the best version of themselves. So again, Vin, it's always a pleasure. I appreciate you having me on. I'm excited for today.
Of course, man. Love you.
Love you
And
too,
I think
man.
that that's a good place to pick up too, is like so we both had big weight losses and transformations. I lost like 85 pounds at one point myself.
Yeah.
And we there's definitely a correlation between, for me, between like just mental health and physical health. If you kind of want to start with your journey on that.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I think back all the time to, the 300-pound mark and what life was like. And, we talked about this on our first podcast together, just what that entailed, right? Being 300 pounds was much more than the weight on the scale. It was, what was life? What did life look like? It was a very dark place. It was full of addiction. It was full of uncertainty, fear, just no direction, no purpose. And the 300 pounds on the scale was just a reflection of the fear that I was living in, right? And once you hit that point in your life, right, or rock bottom, I'd like to say is, you have a choice at that point, right? Do you want to continue living the life that you're living? Are you happy with the life that you're living? Or do you want to make a change, right? Are you done with the old version of you? And are you ready to take that first step into the unknown, like we always talk about? And it's the most feared step, right? Because at that point, that decision is letting go of everything that you've created, whether it be thoughts, habits, relationships, patterns. It's taking this step into uncertainty, getting rid of everything you knew and that was a part of you, right? And that correlation, taking that step is that first step into change. I always say rock bottom is the worst place to be, but it's the most beautiful place to be, right? Because start to take that pursuit into something that can change your life, to take your life into a direction of purpose, of fulfillment, of relationships, of learning about who you are. And that dark place, all those things that I were doing, all those bad habits I were creating, the scale was just a reflection of that. So there's an absolute direct correlation between it all. Everything that we do is all coincided within each other.
Yeah. Yeah, I totally agree. And I think you're carrying the weight in more than one way, right? Like you're carrying
Absolutely.
it figuratively and literally. And I think, like you said, you really hit on it. Like the first step is terrifying and it's hard to make, but once you
Yep.
do it, it does have a trickle effect. But even getting to that and the idea of like carrying that weight, it's just it you could easily just sink deeper into comfort. Like you said, you kind of go to like the vices. That's what you're doing already. That's where you've been. So
Yeah.
changing that is really, really the hard part. Um, and yeah, I know. I mean, for me personally, like I battled like anxiety and depression along the way, and I was actually on medication through the end of my high school career, into high school, into freshman year of college. And when I started working out, that was the first thing that I kicked. I was like,
Yep.
I don't need this medication. Like I realized things that made me feel better. And it was like, you know, making the decision not to eat a third like Italian sub for the day. And instead you get like chicken, a chicken salad. But
Yeah. Yeah.
it's funny, but it's those little things and you realize it and you start to just feel different. Like you don't have this, and I know I keep using the word weight, but like you don't have it holding you down either. And it's not just the weight, it's the decisions that come with it.
Yeah, absolutely. And you hit the head there, right? There's a book, The Atomic Habits. It's when you're in that situation, when you're at that low point, and you take that first step, all that weight that you've carried, right? I was 27 when I made this change, right? All that weight of 27 years, it wasn't going to be fixed in a day. And that first step, those thoughts of everything that you've done to that point can actually hold you back. You want to make a change. You know that you need to make a change, but those thoughts that you continue to play in your head will actually paralyze you. It will keep you exactly where you are and you'll never get started. So that change is only a thought until you take that first step, right? And and it doesn't mean you need to go out and run a marathon with no running experience. It means maybe just showing up to the track and walking a lap. Maybe it means to show up at the gym and walk on the treadmill, right? That first step is the hardest one to take. But that next day, guess what? You just built momentum to say, you know what? I did do the hardest part. Let me see if I show up tomorrow, what this can do. And that consistency, that compound effect, day after day, a little bit more each and every day, man, I mean, it's life changing, right? When I first started, I could not do a lap at the track, man. I was 300 pounds. I could not run a lap at the track. But I knew I needed to make a change. I knew it was going to suck. I knew everything about what I was doing was it was going to be hard, but I knew in order to change my life, I needed to continue. And now here we are, 3 years later, still in this pursuit of untapped potential. Just ran the third marathon with you, with just a group of great people. The possibilities are endless, and the script, it might be hard to follow because you don't know the script, you don't know the roadmap where it's going to lead you, but that consistency, that compounding effect, day after day, month after month, year after year, it takes you exactly where you need to be.
Yeah, it's so true. And I was in the same boat. I was at Rampo College, and for anybody like looking to like why do I start or where do I start or what got you started, like I think whatever it is, just let it be whatever it is. Like I talked about this the other day where like you're you could pretend you're David Goggins to get started. Go for it.
Yeah.
If that's gonna get you started, go for it. Like for me, it was like really corny, but an ex-girlfriend made a comment about my weight, and like it was like the nicest way you could possibly put it. But like I just the things that were happening around me, like I stopped playing baseball because I realized like running was just like why I stopped playing baseball. Like they made us do it was like tryouts and like just like workouts, and they were asking us to run miles, and I was like, I'm not running miles. Like so I gave that up. Like I realized things were changing my life because I was almost becoming like a lazier version. I didn't
Mhm.
coincide it with like anything that I of course it wasn't my fault at the time, but it clearly was. So I hopped on the track myself after comment, and I guess it just sat with me. And I don't even think my ex girlfriend knows at the time that it bothered me as much as it did. But I was at Ramapo College and I went to the track, same thing. I think I got a lap around, and I was like, yeah, this isn't going to work. There's no way. I was like, how do people run miles? Like 4 laps of these is a mile. Heart's beating out of my chest. And that day, I'll be honest, like it was defeating. Like went back to my dorm room and I was kind of like, fuck, like I don't know. How am I going to do it? Like I couldn't even do 2 laps. How am I possibly going to like keep this up? Um, and it was just it's that thing that I think a lot of people get the itch for. Like once you start a healthy habit, other healthy habits start to form. So I think the next morning I made like a healthier choice eating. And then that next night, same thing. I was like, well, why don't I just go back out there and try?
Mhm.
But yeah, that's what did it for me too, man. I mean, it's like you, same thing. Like, I mean, couldn't even run 2 laps around a track, and now in July I ran 100 miles. Like the two, I'm the same person, but I'm not the
Mhm.
same person. Like it's not even fucking close. And
Mhm.
that's the cool part for me. It's I just I didn't even have like a thing to really get me started. I kind of just held on to like the bullshit comment that I needed as fuel.
Yeah.
But I think that's something too, like for you, like where did you start? Because I know I talked to a lot of people who are younger than me now, and like I think just coming out of college is like one of the weirdest spots to be. You're seeing people go famous on Instagram and TikTok, and
Mhm.
it's like, well, maybe I want to do that, or maybe I want to go be a police officer, or maybe I want to go work a normal 9 to 5. Like, there's so many avenues with social media and the internet now that people are almost like debilitated because you have too many options. So I've just been telling everybody, just find something and start. That thing could change, but you're what remains, and the evolution of you is why you're doing it anyway.
Amen. Yeah, so it's a great point. You bring it up, right? And just to take it back, that moment where I decided to make a change, and I appreciate you sharing that, Vin, because, I think somebody listening to this, they might be at that point, but they don't know they're at that point, or they don't know how to identify that they're there, right? They're at that low point where change needs to happen, right? Or should happen. For me, it was like I've said before, being the gambling addict, losing it all in a position where I didn't have anything, right? My friend brought me in. He saved my life, right? He brought me in. He didn't have to do that, but he did, right? That was an opportunity that God was giving me, right? And one day, I did a lot. I caused a lot of pain, a lot of hurt to other people in my life, around me, family, friends. Just not a good person. And one day, I just, sitting there, I was on the couch. I got home. Um, I went into the shower and I just broke down. I felt every emotion, all the pain, all the hurt, everything I've ever done to anybody, Vin. And, I heard the voice. It said, it's now or never. And from that point, I made a promise that, I was going to make a change. And, there is a lot of people around us or situations around us, the social media platforms, trying to be this, trying to do this, right? Try it all, do it all. Who knows where it's going to lead you? I thought I was posting on TikTok for a long time. I was, trying to maybe pursue something that was out of God's will for me. And in that journey, in that process, he led me to where I am today. But I don't know you don't know where you're going to end up. But in that pursuit, in that daily action, step by step, brick by brick, you're going to unfold, the best version of yourself. You're going to learn so much that you didn't know was possible. But until you take those steps or you try it all, you'll never know. So just do it.
Yeah. It's so interesting too, is that like you with like people that get involved in like self-help and self-growth, like I feel like there's this evolution of like you just start, you know nothing, and then
Yeah.
you hit this like middle ground where you think you know everything, and that's where you still know nothing because you're always going to know nothing. But then the more you evolve as a person, you just realize that like you're just on your path and you're doing
Yeah.
your thing.
Yeah.
You kind of know what you know, but there's so much unknown. And we were even talking about this morning, where it's that Alex Hormozy quote where we question everything except for those things that we don't think to question. And
Mm.
it's so true. Like we just follow the masses really until we start to ask ourselves the questions of is this good for me? Is this my way? Like all of that. It's an interesting place to be. But something I definitely want to pick back up on is the and you I know we've talked about it, but I have an addictive nature as well. But if you kind of want to go into the gambling and then how you transitioned out and even like why you think you did it, if you have obviously like done that self work to kind of ask yourself those questions.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think back to, kind of what brought me in that position. I moved out at a young age, very young age. And, I was just in pursuit of, to be honest with you, uncertainty. I didn't know where I was heading. I had, no direction. I dropped out of college. I had an opportunity in the industry that I'm in currently at a young age, right? A friend's dad gave me the opportunity and I worked throughout that. Once I moved out on my own, I knew I had to go all in. But I always felt like I was starting from behind, right? Because I didn't really have that guidance of, how to save or what to do. I was just, living on my own, just enjoying life, drinking, going out. Um, and, on that path, I started gambling. Year after year, it just got worse and worse to the point of just no return. And, there was, at the worst of it, I mean, gambling money I didn't have, thousands I didn't have. And it was just a constant battle of who do I who do I go to? How do I get through this? How am I going to eat? And it absorbed my whole life. It was the moment I woke up to the moment I went to sleep was it. That was all I could think about. Even if I was at work, I was thinking about, what game was on the TV, right? How can I bet the next game? And it was just year after year after year, into the point of, you know, going to Gamblers Anonymous, but wasn't even there for the right reason. It was to save the relationship I was in at the time, right? It was to do it for somebody else, right? That's the problem. I never wanted to fix myself. It was always about somebody else. And it just got to the point where I had to start my life over, give it up. And I didn't fully give it up until I truly knew the Lord, until he removed it from me, right? It was always a battle. I felt like I was trying to beat this addiction that it always had a grip on me, until he took it away. And that's truthfully the only way that um, I was able to get through it completely is once he, decided, or once he gave me my purpose and understood the direction I needed to go, he started eliminating the things in my life that held me down. And it wasn't until that, but for years it held me down, man. It just kept me in the same pattern, same loops, same relationships, same situations. Um,
Yeah.
it's it's wild.
Yeah, I appreciate you sharing, but it's something that was like ringing through there for me as you were saying it, which I think is just crazy, and I'm sure you could attest to now, is that like even in those dark moments, like you figured it out. So you'll have people that could figure it out financially in the worst situations, yet when it comes to like actually betting and self-belief on yourself, like, oh no, I can't switch jobs.
Yeah.
Yet you could like, and again, I don't know, you're the to the extreme, but like people gamble all their money away, but they'll
Yep.
keep figuring that out, or any
Absolutely.
sort of addiction, you'll keep figuring that out, yet you won't have the wherewithal to kind of to take that jump and believe in yourself.
Yeah. And you just hit it on the head there, right? Because it's funny you say that. One of the biggest things, when I was going to Gamblers Anonymous, there was a guy, you share these stories, and everybody had the same story of it wasn't even more about the gambling anymore, because you get to a point of it's not about the money that you put on the game, it's the chase of how were you going to come up with the money when you had no money. You know what I mean? And you figured it out, right? Monday would come around, you're down 4 grand, but you had to figure out a way to do that. Now, I'm not happy about what I did. I did a lot of wrongdoing. There was a lot of bad things I did, but I can't change the past. I can't change anything I did. I'm so thankful that I went through what I went through, because I am who I am today because of what I went through. I can feel the emotions of other people because of what I went through. I care for other people because I know what it's like to, maybe scrape up dimes to eat McDonald's and hopefully get dinner one night, right? So when somebody's going through a situation where they don't, have somebody in their corner, going through what I went through, I'm so thankful for it, because I know it's just a lost soul that just needs some help or some direction, and they could get through it. They can get through it.
Yeah. And that's it too, right? Where it's like direction. And I was not too extreme because I wasn't living on my own and doing like I didn't have bills and stuff like that, but I was also gambling a lot. And it wasn't even for me, it was just like I had nothing. So it was like, oh, for me to like throw 25 bucks on, and it was like, and I'm sure you've done all of the math, but like a little bit on like Drake University. Like I was talking to somebody the other day. They're like, how do you know Drake University? I was like, I've bet like every college school you could possibly think of. And like, especially when it comes to football and basketball, like it's
Yeah.
crazy. But but that was it. It was like I didn't like where I was at, and it was okay. I know that all I have to do is get through. I mean, right now is the perfect time, really, because there's college sports on all day because they're on break. So in my head, it was like even in school or even at work, it was like, okay, I just got to get to like 2 o'clock and then I'll be entertained for the rest of the day. Like that's how I really viewed it. And it's sad because it's like you don't have anything else that this is the thing you need to kind
Yeah.
of keep you engaged. And then the game itself wasn't enough. Like you need something on the line. I
Yep.
think that's where obviously people get into a slippery slope. But that's why when you say direction and just something, and it doesn't have to be a marathon, it doesn't even have to be fitness. It could literally be anything. But I think that's whenever I talk to like young men, that's the first thing I say is like you don't have to like figure out what it is right now, but just
Mm-mm.
start something and just have an aim towards something and let it take like a shape of its own.
Mhm. And I think what you just said there too, Vin, right? It's all about gambling, drinking, everything around us is to escape the present moment, right? Because all that truly exists is right now, you and I talking on this computer about what we're talking about, right? Anything outside of this screen, what we're saying, what we're doing here, it doesn't exist unless we let it enter our mind. So if we're unhappy with what's going on in the world, or there's a lot of bad things, there's a lot of bad relationship situations, right? But the only way for it to affect us is if we allow it in, if we allow it into our sphere, our reality, right? And everything is just a crutch to truly steer us away from all that exists, the gift of life right now, right here with you, with wherever you are in this moment, right? That is the beauty of existing, of being here. Everything else is just an added bonus, and it can either take you away or it can steer you in the right direction. So make sure that everything you're doing is in accordance to your alignment with your purpose, so you know exactly where you need to go and you know exactly what needs to be eliminated.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think that's why me and you rely, not even rely, but like we connect so much with running because like you're forced to be in that present moment and grateful.
Absolutely.
And then something I sent you a video on earlier this morning. It was Chris Williamson talking about menopause. And he speaks about how young men in their late 20s have a like a giant perspective shift. And usually, the fixation in your late 20s is like booze, sports, girls.
Yep.
And along the way, you change and you change a person and what you value really drastically shifts. I just wanted to know your thoughts on that.
Yeah, absolutely. So I always said, right, I don't think you're living until you realize the thoughts that you've had up to this point aren't actually your thoughts. So the moment you start to understand the way you have perceived reality is until that moment, you've thought somebody else's thoughts, right? So once you understand that, you can change everything about what you've known, what you've been taught, what you believe reality to be, your relationships, just everything about your life. And once you realize that, you can start to uncover the layers that got you there in the first place, the habits that put you in that situation in that first place, what you can truly accomplish in that life when you start to create passion, create things around you that lift you up instead of bring you down, right? For me, my relationship with God is the biggest component in my life, right? Because with Him and just surrendering my life to Him, I've been able to just have so much peace because I know all things work in our favor. He's working in our good, to lead us to a greater purpose, to a more positive life, to better the people around me, us, to better the situations around us. Right? We always talk about it, Vin. Right? How do we impact the next person? Right? There's somebody out there struggling. How do we make that person understand they're grateful, they're good, they're perfect the way they are. They just need a little help. How do we change that? How do we be that light in their life? Right? That's what life's about, man.
Yeah. No, it's so so true. It, I love this topic and I just love people like yourself, honestly, because that's what keeps me pushing with all of this too. And I had a conversation with somebody yesterday and it was like, dude, like seeing what you're doing is so inspiring. And I'm like, and it's a guy that's like in the same exact world. And I'm like, dude, you're doing the same shit. Like it's so easy to wake up and see everybody's like Strava watch and like, yeah, you
Yeah,
could look at that and be like, oh my God, like look at what this guy did already. Like now I have to do that this day. Or but I wake up and I'm like, wow, like this is just straight
yeah.
motivation from all of these people I surround myself with.
And that goes back to the scarcity versus abundant mind, right? I could see you doing what you're doing. I could be repelled and say, why is he doing that? Or I could say, how? This man is doing it. Show me the way, right? And that all comes down to you, the way you think, and what you want out of your life. Absolutely.
Yeah. And do you have any other like last minute thoughts on this? Just mental health as a whole or anything anything that's really like speaking to you.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think I wanted to hit home on this because this right here, and it's a verse, a Bible verse I'm going to share. It's Matthew 6:33. Seek ye first the kingdom of God and all his righteousness, and all things will be added upon you. That verse right there, if you're going through it if you're trying to do life on your own, if you give it to God, if you give it to the Lord and you seek the Lord, He will clear your path. He will show you the way. He will give you the light, and He will get you out of the situation that you're in. Seek Him, and the road will be cleared.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that, man. I'm not as deep into faith as I should probably be. It's something I'm definitely gonna work on, but I think just as a whole, having something bigger than yourself to believe in is an absolute game changer.
Absolutely. It's changed my life, and without
Yeah,
Him, I'm nothing. Without everything, He's done for me, I'm not who I am. Nothing more than a vessel, and that's that. There's peace in that. There's love in that because God is love.
absolutely, man. And something that just kind of like was really resonating with me is throughout like thinking about this whole episode is you don't beat mental health, you learn to navigate your mind better. And
Amen.
it's a never ending battle. And I think that's the thing where people tend to think like you kind of get to this level and that's it. Now this is baseline and nothing changes, but it's never that. You're always going to battle things. It's learning how to navigate it.
Absolutely. In the Bible, it says you battle your flesh, right? You're constantly against the world. You're constantly against what the world desires. But once you surrender and you live in accordance to God, um, life is different. It's full of love, and you're always going to have struggles. You're going to have difficulties. There's going to be uncertainty, but it's how you look at that uncertainty, those difficulties. It's not going to get easier in the moment, but you can adjust accordingly, knowing you've been there and that it's all working out for the greater good, for your purpose.
So that's the place we got to end it. I appreciate your time, brother.
Appreciate you, Vin.